We're all here to talk about the trip that we just came back from literally less than 48 hours ago. We were in Arizona, and I had the pleasure, the honor, and the privilege of leading a group of 9 freshman members of Congress from our Republican side to go down to Arizona and see the border. Now, when we talk about the border, it's always, people have different angles to discussing this issue. But this has been a very hot topic for the couple last elections, and of course the last 4 years. Border security has been a disaster under the Biden administration. After President Trump was elected, even before he came into office, we started seeing trends of the traffic going down. And after he got sworn in and was able to sign several executive orders in action, then the numbers just dramatically and drastically dipped. So it was important to go down there and see it for ourselves. Now, when I got here to Washington, I immediately realized that people see the border from one angle or the other. But it's multifaceted. What I talk about specifically are the 3 buckets on the border. We can talk about the border and immigration. We can talk about the border and trade and commerce. And we can talk about the border in security. And they're all unique. Also, they're intertwined. But what a lot of Washington politicians try to do is fix one by focusing on the other, or ignore one and focusing only on one. There is a way and there is a place to see each one of them individually, while you also realize where they are intermingled as well. So let me tell you a little bit about this trip, and then I want you to hear directly from my colleagues that went down there. First, I will say that this was an excellent group of freshmen. I am proud of my freshman class, and meeting this freshman class, I am excited about what's coming up as well for leadership for our side and our party and our country. They asked smart questions. They went down there with an open mind to see what the border life is like, and just engage with every single one of our stops. We started off by visiting with local leadership, law enforcement on the local level, and also the business community. Then we went down to the border where we met with our trade and our commerce partners as well. CBP to start with, and look at the ports of entry, the role they play both in security and also in the commercial relationship with Mexico. For Arizona, Mexico is a #1 trading partner. So we saw that aspect of it. Then we visited a warehouse where we could see where the produce goes, where the manufacturing trade goes, learned a lot there, met with the local stakeholders and the private sector in there as well. Then we met with Border Patrol. The visit with Border Patrol was very enlightening, and I can tell you that their morale is the highest I've ever seen it since coming into office. Why? Because they feel supported. They took us to the centers where I visited before, and it was busting at the seams with over 1,000 people in these holding facilities. Now, the one that we went to, there were 0 in that specific one. So we saw the changes immediately. Then we went back later to that same area in Nogales for a border night tour after a meeting with the Border Patrol Council that I want to thank them for spending dinner with us. They took us down there, and we were there until early hours of the next morning when we were there looking at the border at night where the spotters are and why all these bills that we're working on are so important. And then we finished off the trip by going to Sierra Vista on Saturday to be the first group of members to meet with the U.S. Northern Command and the 10th Mountain Division at Fort Huachuca to learn more about the mission's help of DHS. This is where you've seen the Army soldiers being deployed to this area to help with border security. Many of them had started either that week or that day on the Border Patrol side regarding their mission. So we were the first group of members to be able to ask very specific and key questions on what the mission was going to be and where they were going with this and what meant success. We were able to get informed in all this. So very proud of the trip, very grateful for these members to spend time away from their districts and their families to go down to Arizona and learn about what we learned. So with that, I don't know if Julie, did she end up making it? No? Okay. So I will turn it over to Representative John McGuire from Virginia, who is there on the trip, and I want to hear from him, and then he'll introduce the next speaker. John, go ahead, sir.
Thank you to our leader, Juan Ciscomani. What an incredible member of Congress. If there are 10 angles to the border, he knows 50. And so thank you for your wisdom on the trip. You know, as a Navy SEAL, as a veteran, I see this in Congress as a way to continue service to our country. A lot of Americans think we're out of the woods, but we're not out of the woods. There's still a significant threat at the border. Fentanyl is coming across the border still. They're smuggling it in, and almost 100,000 Americans are killed every year. I've knocked on 6 doors where a mother cried with me because their 18 19 or 20-year-old son or daughter who died because of overdose of fentanyl. And one is too many. So we're still having to deal with that. Border crosses were down to 0, but we're concerned for your safety in that there are these tent cities that could bum rush, so to speak, the border. But I think you're right about the 3 buckets. We have immigration, trade, and security. And Juan, the way you put together this trip, we covered all 3, and it's just an honor to be part of it. There's also something. What's the name of that video game?
Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto. We heard stories of the cartels Snapchatting 15-year-old girl with a baby in a car seat to go pick up illegal aliens and bring them north, and then they text the girl if you for another $1,000 if you run that police car off the road so that our drug vehicle can get away. These are the things that are happening on our border that the American people don't know about. So we got a lot of work to do. We have an incredible freshman class, and it's such an honor to serve with you guys. But next, let's hear from Representative Hurd from Colorado. Thanks so much.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Good evening. My name is Jeff Hurd, and I have the honor of representing Colorado's 3rd Congressional District. I want to thank Congressman Ciscomani for inviting me and my fellow freshman legislators to the Arizona border to see things firsthand. As Congressman Ciscomani points out, there are 3 key issues when it comes to the border: immigration, security, and trade. On the issue of security, Border Patrol plays an essential role in stopping illegal activity, from fentanyl to human smuggling, and a secure border is essential. During our visit, we saw also how essential trade is to our economy. U.S. Customs does a great job of stopping illegal activity like fentanyl trafficking, but also it does a great job of ensuring legitimate goods move freely across the border, keeping supply chains intact and making sure that we have food on our tables. During the visit, we also saw the Nogales port of entry. This is one of the busiest ports of entry in our entire country. It's a critical gateway for goods, including much of the food that you and your family eat. If you enjoy a tomato in winter, it probably came through Nogales. Every day, U.S. Customs does a great job of facilitating the flow of products to grocery stores and businesses across the nation. While border crossings have decreased since the Trump administration, we cannot rest. As Congressman McGuire said, these cartels continue their multi-billion-dollar business in smuggling, and the security of both people and trade must remain a priority. I want to thank Congressman Ciscomani for this invaluable experience and for the hard work that our Customs and Border Patrol agents do to protect both our nation and our economy. We must support them in their efforts to keep our borders secure and trade flowing smoothly. With that, it's my pleasure to turn things over to my friend from Colorado, Congressman Jeff Frank.
Thank you, Jeff, and thanks for being here. Juan, Representative Ciscomani, thank you for your hospitality. Thanks to the citizens and the business leaders and community leaders in Tucson and in Nogales for welcoming us. It was a great trip. And for me, it was especially poignant to see the difference from the last time I was at the border. I was at the border 2 times last year under the Biden administration. I went to Yuma, Arizona, and I also went to McAllen, Texas. And I can tell you it is light years different today than it was then. You can tell it in the number of border crossings, the number of encounters by illegal immigrants coming across the border, and you can tell it by the smiles on the faces of the men and women who protect us every day, the law enforcement, Border Patrol, and ICE and Customs folks. Their morale is sky high because they're being allowed to do their job today, and for 4 years they weren't allowed to do their job. They're very excited about that. In fact, one thing that really struck me is how they said, we're not back at the holding facility watching over 1,200 migrants. We're now able to go out and be on the border and actually secure the border and do the things that need to happen there. And so for me, we were told for 4 years that Congress needed to pass laws in order to get control of the border. Mm-hmm. I maintained, and I know most of the folks here with me maintained, that wasn't the case. We needed a president that had the political will and the political courage to stand up for the American people and for the citizens who patrol that border every day. We finally have a president who is doing that in Donald Trump, and it's making all the difference in the world. And so, again, thank you for the opportunity to go. I appreciate that very much. And to one of my really favorite friends now in Congress, my colleague Dave Taylor from Ohio.
Thank you, Jeff. I am Dave Taylor from Ohio, and I've really appreciated this invitation by Representative Ciscomani, because the part of Ohio I represent is by far the hardest hit by fentanyl, not just addiction, but overdose deaths as well. So I was keen to get down there and see what progress had been, and progress is incredible. As Representative Crank just mentioned, the Border Patrol and our other agencies down there in uniform are doing an amazing job. Their morale couldn't be better. And it's all because, as he stated, we've got an administration that has their back, that just wants them to do their job and lets them do it. That's all that stood between us and a secure border all along. So it was a pleasure to be there. As they mentioned while we were there, the cartels have sort of pulled back, and there's not a lot of traffic at the border right now, but it's a dangerous time for the Border Patrol and our other agencies in uniform down there, because those guys are not going to walk away from a multi-billion-dollar-a-year business. They're strategizing, they're recalibrating, they're plotting their next move. So we have to be extra vigilant, make sure those folks are supported fully, so that they can continue the great mission. What they've done in such a short period of time is absolutely mind-boggling. So we have to support them and make sure they're able to continue to do that. But thanks again, Representative Ciscomani, for including me. It meant the world to me to be there.
Good evening. I'm Derek Schmidt from the 2nd District in Kansas. I want to thank also Representative Ciscomani for the invitation and the hospitality heading down to the border. I had the privilege of serving as Attorney General for my state for a number of years before heading down, so perhaps not surprisingly, I want to say a couple of words about the security bucket, to use Juan's metaphor, if I might. This was my second trip to the border. While I was Attorney General, I went to the border in McAllen a little over 2 years ago, certainly at a much higher point in the migration crisis. What I saw this last week doesn't compare at all. Instead of full holding facilities, we saw empty ones. Instead of full fields, we saw empty ones. Instead of frustrated and demoralized law enforcement officers and border security agents, we saw folks who are excited, as one of my colleagues already said, that they finally are going to be allowed to do their jobs, which they signed up to enforce the law, to deal in a colloquial with bad guys coming across the border. And for 4 years, they often found themselves being clerks dealing with paperwork for mass human migration, as opposed to dealing with bad guys with guns who are smuggling people or drugs into this country. On my watch in the state, we prosecuted folks who came across the border illegally. They sold drugs that killed our people in the state of Kansas. They committed violent crimes in the state of Kansas. I'm remembering one high-speed chase that resulted in a kidnapping and the shooting of a law enforcement officer. So this is very real, not just for those communities literally on the border, but for all of us in this country. And what has changed with the stroke of a pen and a flag of determination from the White House is palpable. Instead of these enormous amounts of human migration, we are now seeing, Congressman Taylor points out, we are now seeing the criminal enterprises recalibrating, refocusing. They're not going to walk away, but our folks are now able to focus on them exclusively. That is night and day different. Let me just end by saying, although it is absolutely true that the immediate mass migration problem is, at least on its face, resolved for now, our work is just starting. In this building behind us, those of us here and our colleagues, we need to lock in those policy changes that were made in this town in the last 6 weeks to make sure that, like a ratchet, they don't go backwards when we may have a different president who has a different point of view, or we may have a different and less strong will in this town to do the things that have to be done to secure our border and protect our country. We need to be sure that we step up and provide the resources in terms of money, but also in terms of other forms of support for the men and women of the Border Patrol, of law enforcement who are doing their jobs. We need to make sure that never again can political decisions in this town prevent state authorities and state law enforcement from doing their jobs when they're trying to stand in the gap because folks in this town decided to retreat from the border. We need to make sure that we support the men and women in uniform in the United States Armed Forces who are part of an unprecedented mission right now to deploy capacities and resources on this border that will make a fundamental difference in our ability to secure it from the Pacific to the Gulf. So again, I want to thank Juan for the opportunity to be part of this, and thank you all for coming out. Let me finally turn this over now to my colleague, Representative Mike Kennedy.
Congressman Mike Kennedy from Utah 3rd District, and I'm honored to be here. And I have a few thanks to give as well. Juan Ciscomani and his team were outstanding to bring me and my colleagues on this transformative experience at the border. It was a great education about how it should be, not how it was. I'm really grateful for him and his team for allowing us to see that. I'm a family doctor by profession, and it's almost like the cancer has been cured, and now I can see the patient afterward, and we can deal with the residual issues that they have. And in addition, I want to thank the local law enforcement as well as business leaders that we met. But I want to particularly thank our Border Patrol agents. These are outstanding, patriotic people that are on a day-to-day basis putting their lives on the line for us and our security. And I met and talked to several of them. Their morale is extraordinary. They are much happier to be out in the field tracking illegal aliens as they try to enter our country, tracking criminals, traffickers, including our American citizens, by bringing fentanyl into our country in an illegal fashion, in a damaging fashion. They intend to destroy our country through doing these things. And our border agents are on the front line of preventing that from happening. In fact, I talked to one who took a bullet to his ear. Sounds pretty familiar to our president's circumstance as a result of his efforts to fight these human traffickers in this terrible trade. So God bless these patriotic individuals, the Border Patrol agents that I met. These people are diligent, dedicated. Instead of processing paperwork, instead of managing personalities that are in facilities, they can be out protecting our border, and they're much happier doing that and doing the job that we need them to do. Finally, I'd like to thank President Trump. We were told over and over that we needed statute, we needed law to be passed so that our border could be secure. What we needed was a new president. Our border is secure. We have order at the border thanks to President Trump. The Remain in Mexico policy did work, and it's working again. The border crossings have reduced from 180,000 in a month's time down to 8,000, and that's because President Trump has taken a firm stand. With the national security issues that are associated with that, I'm grateful for President Trump, and I express my gratitude for him for bringing control and order to the border, finally, after 4 years of the feckless Biden administration. So to Juan Ciscomani and his team, thanks again for allowing me to be on this trip, and we're open to any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So just to thank my colleagues again and to recap, of course, one of the main things that I want to be takeaways from this is that we know that although the numbers are down, the battle is not over. And a lot of the policies that we're able to impact where we are today need to be codified into law, and that's one of our main duties. As we do that as well, why this group of freshmen? Why now? It's at the beginning of their term, and it was important for us to be able to bring people down to Arizona and see what the border looks like. The border in Arizona is very different than the border in Texas, and those that have been to both can see the differences in that. Vast desert, broad terrain. We have federal lands and state lands and tribal lands, a broad combination of that. So again, I think you can see the takeaways and all the perspective of my colleagues that I'm very proud of the way they expressed their experience. So let's open it up for some questions.
Has CBP told you of any direct threats or they fear or they're up against?
Yeah, so as it was mentioned here by several of my colleagues, we all know that the drug cartels in Mexico are not going to walk away from this multi-billion-dollar operation. So we know they're regrouping. Right now, the numbers actually dipped even right before the election, as it became more obvious that President Trump was going to win this election, and they've been steadily on the decrease since that moment of the election, and definitely after the president got sworn in. Now, what we know for a fact is that there's going to be battling on the Mexico side for control and for power and for a new strategy. That's why our agents are preparing for the worst. We heard from several of them that it's going to get worse before it gets better in the sense of violence that run across the border. This also impacts the people on the Mexico side. Things that we don't want to see as well. All those things impact families and impacts the cross-border trade as well. So it has a ripple effect on everything else. Yes.
Have they been affected at all by DOGE or what Elon Musk is doing? Are they, being left alone? Are they exempted, or are they preparing to, cut their workforce just like all the other agencies?
Well, like any other agency, they're interested in being streamlined and making sure that the resources go to the right place. In terms of Border Patrol, I think we've heard from Secretary Noem of the need that they have, and Tom Homan, especially with bed capacity that they're going to be needing pretty soon. So we have to get our act together here with reconciliation, the CR this week, and move on and be able to get the president and his cabinet the resources they need for that. CBP was very clear on what they need as well, which is more agents and Border Patrol more technology. So that was their main request on this. They didn't express any concerns or impact right now with any kind of DOGE effort. I think they've been operating already in the shoestring budget, especially the last 4 years. So they're grateful for the support that is coming. Yes.
Do we see any new legislation as a result of this trip? And then also, what were the conversations like with some of the landowners? So if we talked about there, they still damages.
Yeah, great question. So we are compiling a list that we kept throughout the whole trip on things that we can come back and act on immediately. Some things are going to be a little more intermediate term and long term as well. But we do have some bills right here that can address some of the concerns that we saw. We just passed one, the Agent Raul Gonzalez Officer Safety Act that we worked on. All the members behind me voted for this bill, and also 50 Democrats voted for this. So when you look at bipartisan efforts, there are some good pieces of legislation that tackle specific issues. We've all heard and talked about in this town, in the building behind me, broad, comprehensive immigration reform. And although as much as we want to see all this solved in one bill, it's likely not going to happen that way, at least not immediately. So we need to be tackling these issues one by one. So we have that. We have a bill also that deals with the spotters and tackling that. Also, we heard a lot about the social media activity, which is how these cartels are recruiting our young people. So all these bills are moving towards that. And there was a second part of your question.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of concern from landowners.
Oh, yeah. Yes. We had one of the landowners. He's one of the most vocal ones, fourth generation rancher in the Cochise County area. This is where his land actually has gone from no barrier at all to the wall built by President Trump in his first term. He's very happy with that. But the wall was stacked up in his property for years under the Biden administration before they decided to sell it for pennies on the dollar. He's seeing all that restored. He's happy with the progress. The relationship between the ranchers and the Border Patrol needs to be in good standing for this to happen. But now that they have a common mission and Border Patrol, their hands have been untied to be able to go and perform the duties they were hired to do, I see that getting even much better. But the landowners are very happy with what's happening right now. I mean, their property is safe. One of them, you remember John Ladd saying that his grandkids now, which are the sixth generation of the ranch, they can tell the difference between the smell of a dead cow and a human. And for kids to already at that age be able to tell the difference because of how many deaths they've seen in their property is astounding to me on the U.S. side for sure. We'll take one more question. Yes.
What's been the impact of change in immigration in your district on the economy? Better or worse?
So the economy is a big part of this, what we saw, right? The trade and the commerce piece of it. That has continued to stay strong through these few last months. And what we need to do here is to make sure that we provide CBP with all the tools that they need to continue to be able to facilitate that commerce back and forth. We also have to understand that for our border towns, it depends, but it's 60 to 70, even sometimes 70% of their sales tax comes from the Mexican shopper. Now, I'm not talking about the Hispanic shopper on the U.S. side. I'm talking about the shoppers that cross the border over to do business on the U.S. side. So that cross-national trade, commerce, and tourism is very important for our border states. And if you look at the countrywide map, Mexico and Canada are top trading partners for a lot of the states in the U.S. as well, the majority of them actually. So we need to continue to strengthen that, both at the retail level and also at the trade level, while holding security as a priority. I think that's got to be clear. As much as we talked about trade and we talked about immigration reform, the priority will always remain to secure our border. And that's where President Trump gets a lot of the credit for this, because his win alone helped do all this. As my colleagues mentioned, no laws have changed. We haven't been able to pass one all the way through to the president on immigration or border security. What changed? The person in the White House changed. President Trump being in there, a strong leader with a strong message that the world believes he's going to do what he says he's going to do. That changed everything for this. So as we continue to prioritize border security, because the battle there is not over, we're going to keep on focusing on the economy as well. Thank you all for coming so much. Any more questions for my colleagues behind me?
Yeah, so, sir, you were from Virginia, correct? So, as someone not from a border state, what was some of the things that maybe didn't probably surprise to you on that visit, and maybe some ideas?
Sure. So last night I had dinner at the NRA, the annual banquet in Amherst County. We had folks from all over my district there, and I told them some of the stories and folks that we met, and they said, John, you need to spread that word because the American people don't know. And that farmer that Congressman Ciscomani said He had 18 dead people on his property, and his kids can identify the difference in the smell of a dead human and a dead cow. I heard stories of a Border Patrol agent who was patrolling two hours off road, and one of the I don't know what you call them, spotters surrendered. And he said, "Why are you surrendering?" He said, "There's a woman with a small child over there. I don't think she's going to make it." And so he ran and found her dead with a water bottle with about 1 inch of water. And he grabbed that baby and ran, gave it water, rushed it to the hospital, and saved its life. It's a real struggle out there. It sounds to me like there are some of our competitors or adversaries in the world are actually pushing and promoting this illegal immigration. It's not just some of these folks are like, you come to America, you get all this free stuff. They would have never even thought about it. They're being pushed. And it's almost like they're using immigration as a weapon to deplete our resources. And you think about the fentanyl that's poisoning our people. So I'm just sharing all those stories. We talked about the officers that were shot. I mean, the folks from the ICE, the border agents, to the military folks deployed from the 10th Mountain Division, just American people who love our country. They're communicating. They're working with business owners. And I think what you said about commerce is so important. A lot of people don't know, but if you buy a refrigerator in Mexico, it's not the same quality as a refrigerator bought in the United States. That was an eye-opener for me. So a lot of folks in Mexico are actually coming into the United States buying higher quality goods. And so trade is a very important part of this.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Gentlemen.
Thanks so much, Juan. Really appreciate
Thanks.
it.
You guys are awesome, man. Yeah, we'll follow up.
Thanks, Juan.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. You're the man.